On the far edge of the Andromeda expanse where stars grew thin and silence ruled the void, a small ship hung motionless above a dead moon. Its hull shimmered like liquid silver catching the faint light of a distant sun. The ship was called Whisperwind, and it belonged to Lyra Moonshadow, an elf woman whose eyes held the weight of centuries. She stood alone on the bridge, arms folded, watching the endless dark through a wide, curved window. Her long silver hair fell like a curtain over her shoulders, and her pointed ears twitched at the slightest hum of the ship's systems around her. The air smelled faintly of ozone and old parchment, a scent carried from her homeworld across light years of travel curled. In the heart of the vessel lay Kalen, her dragon companion, his scales black as midnight and smooth as polished stone. He was not large by dragon standards, but his presence filled the chamber. His eyes, half closed, glowed with a soft amber light. Each breath he took pulsed with stored energy. A low thrum that resonated through the ship's bones. Lyra had found him as an egg buried in the roots of a dying star tree, and raised him in secret when the Elven Council forbade such bonds with beasts. They called dragons dangerous relics of a forgotten age, but Lyra knew better. Kalen was not a beast, he was her brother, her shield, her voice when hers failed. For over 300 years, Lyra had patrolled this sector, the last watcher on the outer rim of known space. Her people, the Silvari, had long withdrawn from the galaxy, choosing isolation over conflict. They believed the younger races were too violent, too reckless, too quick to burn their worlds for power. And maybe they were right. But Lyra never fully agreed. She watched from afar as empires rose and fell, as wars flared and faded like sparks in the wind. She recorded it all in silent logs, never interfering, never speaking until today. A signal broke through the quiet. Not a standard galactic broadcast, but something raw, something human. It crackled through the comms array. Weak and distorted yet urgent. It carried coordinates, a planet named Virelis, and a single repeating phrase: "Help us. They are coming again." Lyra frowned. Humans were new to the stars, barely a century into spaceflight, and already they were tangled in wars they did not understand. Virelis was deep in contested space near the border of the Cathar Dominion, a hive-minded insectoid race known for devouring entire civilizations and turning their people into mindless drones. The Dominion had crushed dozens of worlds, and now it seemed they had set their eyes on Virelis. Lyra turned from the window and walked to the command console. Her fingers danced over the smooth crystal interface. As she pulled up the latest intelligence reports, the Dominion fleet had moved faster than expected. Their swarm ships now surrounded Virelis, cutting off all escape routes. Scans showed heavy bombardment on the surface cities. Burning forests turned to ash oceans boiling under orbital fire. And yet the human signal still transmitted, faint but unbroken. She glanced back at Kalen, who had opened his eyes fully now, his gaze steady and knowing. He sensed her thoughts as he always did. "You want to go," he sent, not in words but in feeling a warm pulse in her mind. "Yes," she answered. "They are alone and no one else will come. The Silvari Council would never approve. They had forbidden all contact with outsiders, especially during war. But Lyra had made her choice long ago. She was not just a watcher anymore." With a soft command, she activated the Whisperwind's drive. The ship hummed to life, ancient runes along its hull glowing blue as it turned toward the signal's origin. Kalen uncoiled and stretched his wings, brushing the ceiling gently, then settled again, his body aligning with the ship's core to lend his energy to the journey. As they jumped into the slipstream, space folding around them like silk, Lyra closed her eyes and remembered the last time she had seen her home, the towering crystal spires, the singing trees, the faces of those who called her traitor for believing in something beyond their walls. Hours later, the Whisperwind dropped out of slipstream near the Virelis system. The sight that greeted them was grim Dominion. Vessels swarmed the planet like flies on rotting meat, their jagged hulls bristling with weapon spines and bio-organic cannons. The planet below glowed red in patches, whole continents, darkened by smoke and fire. But even through the chaos, Lyra's sensors picked up the source of the distress call. A small human outpost buried in the northern mountains, shielded by rock and willpower. She guided the Whisperwind into a high orbit, cloaking the ship in a veil of refracted light, making it nearly invisible to scanners. Kalen remained still, His energy focused on maintaining the cloak while Lyra studied the battlefield below. Human defenses were crumbling their orbital stations, destroyed their fighters, shot from the sky, yet on the surface tiny flashes of resistance still sparked railgun turrets firing from hidden bunkers, drones launching suicide runs against Dominion landing pods. Someone down there was still fighting. Lyra knew she could not land openly. The Dominion would detect her in seconds, and though the whisper wind was powerful, it was not built for open war. It was a scout, a guardian, not a warship, but she did not need to fight to help. She needed to reach the humans, give them a chance to survive, maybe even to win. She opened a secure channel and sent a narrow beam transmission in basic human standard language. "This is Lyra Moonshadow of the Silveri. I hear your call. I am here to help. Respond if you can." For a long moment there was only static. Then a voice crackled through, tired but sharp, female and young. "This is Chloe Bennett of the Varelli's Resistance. We read you. Who are you really, and why should we trust you?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Trust is earned, not given, but I offer no tricks, only aid if you will take it." Pause, then a sigh. "We have nothing left to lose. Send your coordinates," as Lyra prepared to descend. She felt Kalen stir behind her, his thoughts brushing hers again. "Be careful, little sister. These humans are fragile but fierce. Yes," she thought, "they remind me of you." The whisper wind slipped through the atmosphere like a falling leaf, silent and graceful. Below, the mountains rose sharp and snow-capped, scarred by recent explosions. Smoke curled from valleys where villages once stood. Lyra guided the ship into a hidden canyon, its walls shielding them from orbital sight. She landed softly on a flat rock shelf and powered down all non-essential systems. Moments later, figures emerged. From a tunnel in the cliff face, humans wrapped in scorched armor. Faces smudged with soot and eyes wide with suspicion. At their lead was Chloe Bennett, early 30s, wiry and sharp-eyed, with short brown hair and a rifle slung over her shoulder. She stopped a few meters from the ship, her team fanning out behind her, weapons ready, but not raised. The ramp of the whisper wind lowered with a soft hiss, and Lyra stepped out barefoot, in simple gray robes, her silver hair catching the dim light. She raised her hands, palms open in the universal sign of peace. "I come alone," she said, her voice calm and clear. "No weapons, no tricks, just me and my friend." Chloe studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're not Dominion, that much is obvious. But you're not human either." "What are you?" "An elf," Lyra said simply, "from a people who once walked among stars before your ancestors learned to build fire. We have watched you from afar, and now we choose to stand with you." Chloe exchanged glances with her team, then stepped forward, her expression softening just a little. "We've lost everything out there, our cities, our families, our fleet. If you really want to help, tell us how." Lyra looked past her to the burning sky, then back into Chloe's eyes. "By giving you hope and a dragon." At that, Kalen emerged from the ship, not roaring, not threatening, but gliding down the ramp with quiet grace, his massive form dwarfing the humans, yet moving with impossible gentleness. He lowered his head toward Chloe, who stood frozen, not in fear but in awe. "This is Kalen," Lyra said. "He does not speak your tongue, but he understands your pain and your courage." Chloe reached out slowly and touched one of Kalen's scales. It was warm and smooth like stone, kissed by sunlight. She looked at Lyra and for the first time in weeks smiled. "We could use a dragon above them." The sky darkened as another Dominion wave approached, but down in the canyon, something new stirred. Not just survival, but the first flicker of defiance. The humans had an ally now, and the Dominion had no idea what was coming. Lyra knew the real battle was ahead. The Silveri would not approve. The Dominion would retaliate with everything they had, and the humans were still outmatched. But as she stood beside Chloe, watching Kalen curl protectively around the small group, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. Hope. The galaxy had ignored the humans for too long, but Lyra would not. And in that moment, on a broken world beneath a burning sky, the tide began to turn, not with a shout but with a whisper, and the quiet step of an elf and her dragon walking into the storm together. Varelli's burned under a sky choked with smoke and ash. The air tasted of metal and charred earth. Once green valleys now lay blackened forests, reduced to skeletal remains. Rivers boiled from orbital strikes, and the wind carried the cries of the Lost, the Cthar Dominion had come not to conquer, but to consume. Their insectoid ships descended like locusts, swarming over cities, tearing them apart with clawed drones and acid rain. Their hive mind pulsed through the planet, a cold, relentless rhythm that crushed hope wherever it touched. In the ruins of a city once called Alara, a group of humans huddled in a bunker deep beneath shattered concrete and twisted steel. The walls shook with every distant explosion, dust falling from the ceiling like gray snow. Among them was Chloe Bennett, her face streaked with grime, her hands busy rewiring a broken comms unit. She had been an aerospace engineer before the war. Now she was a leader by accident. Not choice, but the people looked to her, and she could not turn away. Around her sat other survivors with tired eyes and steady hands. There was Mara, a former pilot with a broken leg wrapped in cloth and a sharp tongue. There was Jules, a quiet medic who never slept more than 2 hours at a time, and Ben, a teenager who had lost his whole family but still carried water for the wounded. They were all that remained of Alara's defense force, and they knew the Dominion would find them. Soon their last railgun turret had fallen the day before, and their food stores were nearly gone. Chloe finished the repair and the comms unit crackled to life, static hissing like a snake, then silence again. She sighed and leaned back against the cold wall. "We are out of time," she said softly. "If we stay here, we die. If we run, they hunt us down." Mara looked up from cleaning her sidearm. "They always hunt us down," she said. "But maybe this time we take a few of them with us." Before anyone could answer, the ground trembled, not from an explosion, but from something deeper, something alive. A low hum filled the air and the lights flickered, then steadied in a strange blue glow. Everyone froze. Jules stood slowly, his eyes wide. "Did you feel that?" Chloe nodded, her heart pounding. It was not Dominion. It felt older, cleaner, like the hum of a star. Then a voice came. Not through the comms but inside their heads, calm and clear. "Do not be afraid, I am Lyra Moonshadow and I have come to help." The humans looked at each other in shock. Then the wall of the bunker shimmered like water and parted silently, revealing the elf woman standing just outside. Her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light behind her loomed the massive shape of Kalen the dragon, his amber eyes scanning the room with quiet intelligence. Chloe stood, slowly, her hand near her weapon but not drawing it. "Who are you really?" she asked again, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. Lyra stepped inside the bunker, the strange blue light following her like a second skin. "I told you before, I am of the Sylvari. We have watched your kind from afar. We believed you were too young for the stars, too quick to fight. But I see now you fight not for power, but for life. That is something my people forgot long ago." Kalen lowered his head and let out a soft rumble, not a threat but a greeting. Ben reached out without thinking and touched the dragon's snout. Kalen blinked slowly, then nuzzled the boy's hand gently. Mara lowered her weapon slowly. "So you are real," she said. "Not a dream or a trick." "No trick." Lyra said, "The Dominion fears nothing, but they will fear you soon if you let me show you how." Over the next few hours, Lyra shared what she knew. The Dominion was not invincible. Their hive mind had a central node, a queen hidden deep in their command ship. If that fell, the swarm would collapse into chaos, but no one had ever gotten close. The ship was shielded by layers of bioarmor and guarded by thousands of drone. Chloe listened intently, her mind racing. "We tried to hit their command ship with everything we had. Our best missiles just bounced off because you fight with metal alone," Lyra said. "But the Dominion is not just machine. It is life twisted and wrong. Kalen can sense the flow of their energy, the weak points where their hive mind connects." Kalen stepped forward and placed one clawed foot on the bunker floor. A soft pulse spread from his touch and the ground glowed with faint lines like veins of light. "These are ley lines," Lyra explained, "old energy paths that run through every world. The Dominion has poisoned them here, but not completely. If we awaken them, they can disrupt the hive mind even for a moment." Jules frowned. "How do we do that?" "You do not," Lyra said. "I do, but I need your help, your machines, your courage, your will, to stand when all seems lost." Chloe looked at her team. They were exhausted, broken, but their eyes held a spark. They had nothing left to lose, but everything to gain. "What do you need us to do?" she asked. "First," Lyra said, "we must move. The Dominion is scanning this sector. They will find this bunker soon. We go to the heart of the mountains where the ley lines are strongest there. We build a focus, a device that will channel Kalen's power and the planet's energy together. Mara winced as she stood, but we have no transport. Our vehicles are all destroyed. Kalen rumbled again and turned his side toward them. Climb on, he can carry you. The humans exchanged glances. Then without another word, they gathered their gear and climbed onto the dragon's back. His scales were warm and surprisingly comfortable. He moved with care as if aware of their fragility. Then with a powerful leap, he burst through the bunker ceiling, stone and metal crumbling around them, but not touching them. The blue light shielded them as they rose into the smoke-filled sky above the ruins of Alara. The Dominion drones swarmed, but Kalen flew fast and low. Weaving through canyons and valleys, his form cloaked in shadow and mist. Lyra sat between his wings, guiding him with silent thoughts. Below, the humans held on tight, their fear giving way to awe at the sight of the world from above. Even in ruin, it was beautiful. After an hour, they reached a high mountain pass where ancient stones stood in a circle covered in moss and frost. The air here was clearer, colder, and the hum of the ley line stronger. Lyra dismounted and walked to the center of the circle, placing her hands on the largest stone. Close your eyes, she said, and listen. The humans did as she asked, and slowly they felt it, a deep vibration in the earth, a song older than time. This place was sacred once, Lyra said, before the Dominion came, before your cities rose. We will make it sacred again. While Lyra began her work, chanting in a language that sounded like wind through trees, Kalen coiled around the circle, his body glowing brighter with each passing minute. The humans worked too, using spare parts from their gear to build a crude amplifier. Following Lyra's instructions, Chloe wired capacitors to solar cells. Jules mixed conductive paste from ash and water. Ben carved symbols into metal plates based on Lyra sketches. They worked through the night as distant explosions lit the horizon. The Dominion knew something was happening. They sent scout drones, but Kalen intercepted them in silence, each one vanishing in a flash of amber fire. By dawn, the device was ready. A strange fusion of human tech and elven magic wires wrapped around glowing crystals. Antennas pointed to the sky and the ground, all connected. To Kalen's core, Lyra stood before them, her eyes bright with exhaustion and purpose. This will not destroy the Dominion, she said, but it will break their hold on this world for a short time, long enough for your fleet to strike if they come. Chloe frowned. Our fleet is gone. The Dominion wiped them out in the first wave. Not all, Lyra said. I sent a signal before we left my ship. It reached beyond this system. If there are any humans left who can hear it, they will come. Mara looked up sharply. You called? For help? He called for hope, Lyra said. And hope is never truly gone. As if on cue, a new sound filled the air, distant but growing stronger. The deep thrum of engines, not Dominion, not elven human engines. Chloe ran to the edge of the cliff and looked up, her breath catching in her throat. On the horizon, a line of ships broke through the clouds, battered but flying proud. Their hulls marked with the United Earth Defense symbol at their lead. A heavy cruiser, its name barely visible through the smoke, but Chloe knew it. Captain Mara Line's ship, the Aegis. They came, she whispered. They actually came. Lyra joined her side, a small smile on her lips. They are your people. They fight for each other. That is their strength. Below in the valley, Dominion forces stirred, sensing the new threat. Their swarm ships began to gather, forming a wall of chitin and steel between the mountains and the incoming human fleet. Kalen rose to his full height, his wings spreading wide, his eyes blazing with power. It is time. He sent to Lyra as she said, it is time. The humans took their positions around the device, Chloe at the main console, Mara on overwatch, Jules ready with medkits, Ben holding a flare gun just in case. Lyra placed her hands on the central crystal and began to chant the words ancient and strong. The ground shook, the sky darkened, and the ley lines flared to life. Blue fire racing up the mountainside and into the device. Kalen roared, not in anger but in power, and the world answered. High above, the human fleet slowed as their sensors went wild. Captain Mara Lynn stood on her bridge, her eyes wide at the energy surge below. She had followed Chloe's last known signal against every order. She had lost half her ships getting here, but she would not turn back now as the Dominion swarm charged forward, ready to crush the humans once and for all. The mountain exploded with light, not fire, but pure energy. A wave of blue force that washed over the battlefield. silencing Dominion comms, disrupting their hive link, and for the first time in centuries, the swarm hesitated. In that moment of silence, the human fleet fired. While Lyra and Chloe held the line on Virellis far beyond the edge of known space, another kind of battle raged in the dark between stars. Captain Mara Lynn stood on the bridge of the Aegis, her knuckles white on the railing as her ship tore through, hyperspace alarms blaring and lights flashing red around her. They had jumped blind following a faint signal from Chloe Bennett, a signal no one else believed was real. But Mara knew better. Chloe never cried for help, unless the world was ending. The Aegis was not alone. Behind her flew the last of the United Earth Defense Fleet. 12 ships battered and low on fuel, their hulls scarred from a dozen skirmishes. They had fought their way through Dominion patrols, ignoring orders to fall back to. Earth Command had called them reckless fools. But Mara did not care. She had lost too many friends to wait for permission to save the rest as they neared the Virelli system. The ship shuddered violently, dropping out of hyperspace with a groan of stressed metal. The view screen lit up with horror. Dominion ships filled the sky, thousands of them swarming like angry wasps around the planet below, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with sickly green light. Orbital cannons fired non-stop, turning cities to glass and oceans to steam. Mara took a deep breath and turned to her crew, eyes sharp and voice steady. All hands, battle stations, raise shields, charge main batteries, and patch me through to all ships. A young comms officer nodded, her voice tight. This is Captain Lynn to all UID vessels. We are here not to win a war, but to give our people a chance. If you are scared, stay behind. If you are ready, follow me and make them remember why they should fear us. A chorus of ayes came back over the comms. No one stayed behind. Meanwhile, on the surface, Lyra felt the shift in the air. The energy from the ley lines surged as if answering a call. She looked up and saw the human fleet appear like ghosts in the smoke. Kalen lifted his head, his amber eyes narrowing at the swarm above. They came, she whispered. Chloe joined her at the cliff edge, her heart pounding. They really came, but the Dominion was not idle. Their hive mind recoiled from the disruption, but adapted fast. New orders pulsed through their ranks and their swarm reformed tighter. Sharper focused on the new threat above in the Aegis, Mara watched as Dominion ships turned toward them. Weapons charging, she did not flinch. We hit them hard and fast. Target their command spines, ignore the drones, go for the big ones. The fleet responded as one railgun turrets roared. Fusion beams lanced out and missiles streaked through the void. The first wave of Dominion ships exploded in silent fire, but more came always. More. Mara gritted her teeth. They were outnumbered 10-1, but humans had always fought best when cornered. Back on the mountain, Lyra closed her eyes and reached deep into the planet, feeling the pain of Virellis, the wounds left by Dominion drills and fire. She placed her hands on the stone circle again and began to chant louder. This time the words were old, older than her people, older than stars. Kalen pressed close, his body humming with power, feeding the ritual. The ground trembled and cracks of blue light spread across the surface, racing toward the Dominion landing zones where their hive pits burrowed into the earth. The energy struck like lightning, frying their bio-networks and causing chaos among the ground forces. Chloe watched in awe as Dominion drones stumbled and fell, their movements jerky and broken for the first time. They were not acting as one. Now, she said, turning to her team. Now we hit them where it hurts. Mara and Jules grabbed packs of explosives. Ben loaded his rifle and they moved out into the ruins, guided by the ley line pulses. Lyra stayed behind to maintain the ritual, Kalen watching over her like a shadow. Above, the battle grew fiercer. The Aegis took heavy fire, its left engine sputtering. But Mara refused to retreat. She ordered her ship to dive toward the largest Dominion vessel, the command dreadnought, its hull bristling with weapon spines and pulsing with hive energy. All power to forward shields, she shouted, and load the prototype. Her weapons officer hesitated. Sir, that weapon is unstable. It could tear the ship apart. Then we go out loud. Mara said, fire deep in the Aegis core. A device hummed to life, built from stolen Dominion tech and human ingenuity. It was a resonance bomb designed to shatter bioorganic matter. At the molecular level, no one knew if it would work. But today they would find out. The bomb launched not with a bang, but with a scream of warped space. It struck the dreadnought's hull, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship convulsed. Green, ichor bursting from its seams as its internal structure unraveled. The hive mind screamed across the battlefield, a sound felt not heard, and for a few precious seconds the entire Dominion force froze. On the surface, Chloe and her team used that moment to plant their charges on a major hive pit. The explosion lit up the valley, shaking the mountain itself. On the Aegis, Mara saw the opening and barked new orders. All ships focus fire on their command nodes. They are blind now, hit them hard. The human fleet pressed the advantage. Railgun slugs punched through weakened hulls. Fusion beams melted armor and fighters swarmed like hornets, taking out sensor clusters and weapon mounts. But the Dominion was not done. Their queen still lived, hidden deep in the Dreadnought's core, and she was angry. From the heart of the dying ship, a new signal pulsed stronger, darker, and it called every Dominion ship within 100 light years to converge on Varelli's. Mara saw the new swarm forming on her scanners, and her blood ran cold. They were about to be buried under an avalanche of chitin and hate. Then a new presence filled her mind. Calm, steady. Ancient Captain Mara Lynn. This is Lyra Moonshadow. I see what you see. And I know what must be done. Mara blinked, startled by the voice in her head. Who are you, a friend? She said. And I have a dragon. Before Mara could respond, the sky above Varelli's split open, not with fire, but with light. Kalen rose from the mountain, his form growing larger with every second, his wings spanning the width of a city, his eyes burning like twin suns. The Dominion ships turned toward him, but too late. Kalen opened his jaws and exhaled not flame, but a storm of quantum energy, a wave that unraveled matter and silenced thought. It swept across the battlefield, erasing Dominion ships from existence, not destroying them, but unmaking them as if they had never been. On the Aegis, the crew stared in stunned silence as 3 entire armadas vanished in less than a minute. Mara whispered, "What in God's name was that?" Hope Lyra sent simply on the surface. Chloe looked up at Kalen with tears in her eyes. He was not just a pet or a weapon. He was life itself, fighting back. The remaining Dominion forces broke ranks, fleeing into the void there. Hive mind shattered beyond repair. The human fleet held position, weapons hot, but no targets left. Mara ordered a full scan of the planet, and when she saw the small group on the mountain, she knew who they were. Prepare a shuttle. She said, I am going. Down as the Aegis moved into low orbit, Lyra stood waiting, Kalen beside her. His size now returned to normal, but his presence no less powerful. The shuttle landed softly, and Captain Mara Lynn stepped out. Her uniform torn, her face smudged with soot, but her eyes sharp and kind. She walked straight to Chloe and pulled her into a tight hug. You crazy fool. Mara said you had me scared to death. Chloe laughed through tears. I knew you'd come. Mara turned to Lyra and bowed slightly. I owe you my life and my fleet. Lyra shook her head. You owe me nothing. You came because you chose to. That is your strength, not mine. Kalen lowered his head toward Mara, and she reached out slowly, touching his snout. Just as Ben had done, so this is the dragon. Everyone is whispering about he is more than a dragon. Lyra said he is the heart of this world, and now he is your ally too. As the sun broke through the smoke for the first time in weeks, the humans and the elf stood together on the mountain, looking out. Over a broken but not defeated world, the war was not over. The Dominion would regroup and return, but now they knew something new. Humans did not fight alone, and they had a dragon on their side. The Dominion had never known fear before. They saw the human fleet arrive. They had crushed empires, swallowed worlds, turned entire species into mindless drones. But humans were different. They did not break. They burned brighter as the Aegis and its sister ships held orbit over Varelli's. The Dominion command Dreadnought pulsed with rage, its hive mind screaming orders across the swarm. Thousands of bioships turned as one, their weapon spines glowing green with charged plasma. They saw the humans, not as a threat but as insects to be swatted. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Mara Lynn stood calm, her eyes locked on the main view screen. She had lost 2 ships already in the approach, one torn apart by drone swarms, the other melted by orbital fire, but she did not flinch. She had come too far to turn back. Now all ships formed Delta Wedge. She ordered focus fire on the Dreadnought's forward spines. Ignore everything else, her fleet responded instantly. 12 ships moving as one. Their railgun turrets roaring to life, slugs the size of small cars shot through the void. striking the dreadnought's armor with thunderous impacts. Each hit sent shockwaves through the Dominion ship, but its bioshell healed fast, regrowing like living flesh. Mara cursed under her breath. They were running out of time. On the surface, Lyra felt the planet shudder beneath her feet. The ley lines strained under the weight of Dominion corruption. She placed her hands on the ancient stone circle again. Her voice, low and steady, Kalen pressed close his body, humming with stored energy, ready to unleash it at her command. Chloe stood nearby, watching the sky, her heart pounding. She had seen what the Dominion could do, and she knew the humans were outmatched. But something in her refused to accept defeat. "We need to give them an opening," she said to Lyra. Lyra nodded. "The ritual is ready, but it will take everything from Kalen and from Mido." Chloe said, "We will hold the line." Kalen lifted his head and let out. A soft rumble, not of fear but of resolve, high above the battle, reached its peak. The human fleet broke formation, diving through the swarm like hawks through a storm. Railgun fire tore through smaller Dominion ships. Fusion beams melted hulls, and missiles exploded in bursts of white-hot plasma. But for every ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Then the dreadnought fired. A beam of green energy lanced out, striking the Aegis port side. The shield buckled and failed. The hull melted like wax. Alarms blared as fire spread through the lower decks. Mara gripped the railing. "Hard report, engineering is gone," she said, her voice tight. "We lost engines 2 and 3, but weapons are still hot." "Then keep firing," she growled. At that moment the mountain below erupted with light blue energy, shot into the sky like a pillar of pure starlight. It struck the dreadnought dead center, not with force but with silence. The hive mind screamed as its connection to the swarm flickered and died for 1 full second. The Dominion froze in. That second the humans struck. Mara shouted, "All ships fire everything." Railgun slugs hit the dreadnought's weak points, exposed by the energy surge. Fusion beams burned through its core, and the Aegis launched its last resonance bomb straight into the heart of the ship. The explosion was silent in the vacuum, but bright enough to blind sensors across the system. The dreadnought convulsed, then shattered from the inside out, green ichor boiling into space as its hive mind unraveled. But the true horror for the Dominion came next. Kalen rose from the mountain, his form swelling with power, his wings spreading wide enough to block out the sun, his eyes blazing with ancient fire. He opened his jaws and exhaled. Not flame, but a storm of quantum energy. A wave that did not burn but unmade. It swept across the battlefield, erasing Dominion ships from existence. Not destroying them, but dissolving them into nothing, as if they had never been born. On the Aegis the crew watched in stunned silence as 3 entire armadas vanished in less than 60 seconds. Mara whispered, "What was that?" Hope Lyra sent into her mind. On the surface, Chloe fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She had seen death for so long she forgot what victory felt like. The remaining Dominion ships broke formation, fleeing into the void. Their hive mind shattered beyond repair. They broadcast frantic signals to their homeworld, warning of a new power, a species that fought with machines and magic, and a dragon that devoured reality itself. The human fleet held position, weapons hot, but no targets left. Mara ordered a full systems check and a damage report. They had won, but at a cost. Half their ships were crippled, their ammo nearly gone, and their crew exhausted. But they were alive, and Varelli still stood. As the smoke cleared, the sun broke through for the first time in weeks, casting golden light over the broken land. On the mountain, Lyra swayed on her feet, drained from the ritual. Kalen curled around her gently, his warmth keeping her from collapsing. Chloe ran to her side. "Are you okay?" Lyra smiled weakly. "We did it. You gave us a chance," Chloe said, "and we took it." Above them, the Aegis lowered a shuttle, its engines humming softly. Captain Marlene stepped out, her uniform torn, her face smudged with soot, but her eyes sharp and kind. She walked straight to Chloe and pulled her into a tight hug. "You crazy fool," Mara said. "You had me scared to death." Chloe laughed through tears. "I knew you'd come." Mara turned to Lyra and bowed slightly. "I owe you my life and my Fleetly." Lyra shook her head. "You owe me nothing. You came because you chose to. That is your strength, not mine." Kalen lowered his head toward Mara, and she reached out slowly, touching his snout, just as Ben had done so. "This is the dragon everyone is whispering about. He is more than a dragon, Lyra said he is the heart of this world. And now he is your ally too. As the survivors gathered on the mountain, human and elf side by side, they looked out over a broken but not defeated world. The war was not over. The Dominion would regroup and return, but now they knew something new. Humans did not fight alone, and they had a dragon on their side. The galaxy would hear of this day, how the human fleet entered the battle zone, and the enemy did not last a minute, not because of superior weapons or numbers, but because they fought with something the Dominion could never understand: courage, loyalty, and hope. And in the center of it all stood an elf woman and her dragon, silent guardians of a new age where humans were no longer the youngest race but the fiercest. The stars watched, and for the first time in centuries they were afraid not of the Dominion, but of what humans might become with friends like these. Peace came to Virelli slowly, like the first green shoots after a forest fire. The skies cleared, the rivers cooled, and the wind no longer carried the stench of burning metal. In the northern mountains, where the stone circle stood, a new settlement rose from the ashes. Not a city of steel and glass, but a place of woodstone and shared memory. Humans and elves worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the shadow of what they had survived together. Chloe Bennett walked the rebuilt paths, her boots scuffing the packed earth. She wore no armor now, just a simple tunic and a tool belt slung over her shoulder. She had traded her rifle for a wrench, and her title of resistance leader for something quieter. Builder, healer, friend. Near the center of the camp, Captain Mara Lynn stood with a group of engineers pointing at schematics spread over a makeshift table. They were designing a new kind of ship, one that blended human engineering with elven energy cores. The project was called the Dawnrunner, and it would be the first vessel built by both species together. Mara looked up as Chloe approached and smiled. "You look like you slept." "A little," Chloe said, "more than I have in years." They stood in silence for a moment, watching workers, hallbeams, and children chase each other through the dust, laughing like the war had never happened. "It still feels unreal." Mara said that we won. We did not win alone. Chloe said, glancing toward the ridge where Lyra often sat. And that ridge, Lyra Moonshadow, watched the settlement below, her silver hair loose in the breeze. She wore simple robes now. No longer the scout of the Outer Rim, but something new. A bridge, a teacher, a friend. Kalen lay beside her, his massive form curled like a cat in the sun, his scales glinting in the light. He had grown quieter since the battle. His fire banked, but his presence stronger than ever. The Silvery Council had sent word after the battle, their message cold and formal: "You have broken the oldest law you have. Allied with outsiders, you are no longer one of us." Lyra had read the message, then folded it and placed it in the fire. She did not need their approval. She had found her home not among crystal spires, but among humans who fought for each other. Even when hope was gone down in the camp, a group of children gathered near Kalen, some brave enough to climb onto his tail, others just watching in awe. He let them touch his scales, his eyes half closed in contentment. One little girl placed a wildflower on his snout, and he rumbled softly in. "Thanks." Chloe walked up the path to join Lyra, the climb familiar. Now she sat beside her on the warm stone and looked out over the valley. "They are healing," she said. "So are we." Lyra replied. For weeks after the battle, the humans had struggled with fear, expecting the Dominion to return any day. But the weeks turned to months and no ships came. Scouts reported the Dominion homeworld in chaos, their hive mind fractured beyond repair without a queen. The swarm turned on itself, devouring its own. The galaxy had taken notice too. Messages came from distant system species that had hidden from the Dominion, now reached out to Earth, asking for alliance, for protection, for hope. And at the center of it all stood the humans, not as beggars but as leaders. "We are building something new." Lyra said, "Not just ships, but trust." Chloe nodded. "We used to think we were alone in the dark. Now we know we never were." Kalen lifted his head and looked to the east, where the first stars were beginning to appear. His ears twitched slightly. "You sense something?" Chloe asked. "Not danger," Lyra said. "But change. The Dominion is broken." But other shadows stir in the deep void. Mara joined them, then her steps sure on the rocky path she carried. 3 cups of steaming tea made from mountain herbs. She handed one to each of them. "The Council on Earth wants to send a fleet to the Dominion core." Mara said, "Finish what we started." Lyra shook her head. "Violence only breeds more violence. The Dominion is already dying, let it fall on its own. Then what do we do, Mara asked. We build, she said. We teach, we protect, and we watch as if on cue a ship appeared on the horizon. Not Dominion, not Silvari, but human, its hull painted with the colors of Earth and the symbol of the Dawn Runner. It landed gently in the valley below, and a young pilot stepped out waving up at them. That is Lisa, Chloe said. One of our best, she has been mapping the outer sectors. Mara smiled. She found something she always does. That night around a fire in the center of camp, stories were told not of war but of survival, of courage, of a dragon who saved the world, and an elf who believed in humans when no one else would. Lyra sat apart, as was her way, but not alone. Kaelin rested, his head in her lap, his warmth a constant comfort. She looked up at the stars, and for the first time in centuries she did not feel like a watcher. She felt like a part of something. The next morning work began again on the Dawn Runner, its frame rising. Against the sky like a promise, the humans handled the metal and circuits. The elves wove energy threads into its core, and Kaelin lent his breath to temper the alloys, making them stronger than anything ever built. As the ship took shape, so did a new understanding. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of allies waiting to be found. Weeks later, the Dawn Runner was ready. Its maiden voyage, a simple trip to a nearby system to deliver supplies, and Hope. Chloe stood on the ramp as the crew boarded. She would not be going this time. Her place was here, building the future. Mara hugged her tight. Be safe, she whispered. Always, Chloe replied. As the ship lifted off, Kaelin rose to his feet and let out a low rumble. Not a roar, but a blessing. The ship passed through his breath and glowed faintly blue as it climbed into the sky. Lyra watched it go, her hand resting on Kaelin's neck. They are ready, she said. They have you to thank for that, Mara said, joining her. Lyra said. They have each other. In the days that followed, the settlement grew stronger. Trade routes opened, messages flowed, and children learned both human math and elven songs. Rumors spread across the stars of a world where humans and elves lived as one, where a dragon guarded the skies and where courage was the truest weapon. Other threats would come. The void was never empty. But now, when darkness stirred, the galaxy whispered a new warning. Beware the humans, and never, ever anger their dragon. For they had seen what happened when the human fleet entered the battle zone, and the enemy did not last a minute.